Hey everyone, Adam here at Low and Slow Barbecue Supplies. Hey, on today's video we're going to smoke lamb neck. This is one of my favourite cuts of meat to eat. Just show you what they look like. They're pretty kind of primal. Kind of just basically the neck chopped off at each end. See the spine down the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run you through the process of trimming these up, how we season them, and then obviously run you through the various stages of cooking. I got these from my butcher. I just asked him to save me all the necks that he was butchering, off the lambs he was butchering for a given time period. Reasonably affordable. I think these are about $10 a kilo. Super great eating. You end up kind of just picking the meat off the bone a bit like if you're eating a whole fish. So I'm just going to set up the camera here and talk you through trimming one up. It's reasonably straightforward, but there's a little bit of trimming to do. So we'll get this set up and start trimming. Okay, so basically we've got a kind of a big layer of fat that goes more or less all the way around. So we're just going to take that off. You can see we will lose a little bit of meat. You can see there's a thin layer of meat running around there. But obviously the stuff we want is on the inside, so I'm just going to run my knife carefully around. I'm no butcher, so there's probably a better way of doing this. As always, it's great to start with a sharp knife, that way you don't have to put too much pressure on. And really with trimming, what we're trying to achieve, more or less regardless of what we're cooking, is it's just exposing the meat so that we can get the seasoning on and get better smoke penetration. If we just dump seasoning on top of the fat, typically, unless it's not real hard brisket fat, the fat will render and melt down, and the rub will melt with it, which is kind of defeats the purpose of putting the seasoning on. So it's not that the fat's yucky for the most part, although some hard fat will not render and be nasty eating. It's just really more about getting seasoning on the meat. The neck does have this big tendon running through here, so I do cut that out. I just kind of get my knife either side of it here. And then going underneath. Hopefully you guys can see this all right. It's easy to get the big bit out, but I'm kind of a bit OCD with the trim, so I like to get in there a little bit deeper and dig it all out. That's definitely not going to be good eating, or something that you really want to get anywhere near your mouth actually. Cool, so that's pretty much a nice basic trim. Again, you could get a bit more OCD, remove some more of this fat. You do want to be careful on a small cut like this. Obviously there's not a ton of meat, so we do want to maximize our yield, and we're not trimming for any kind of presentation value. Again, if you're OCD like me, you might want to get your knife all the way down in there and get every little bit of this tendon out. Cool, so that's more or less pretty straightforward trim. There are going to be little bits of flaps and stuff hanging off the meat. Typically if you're doing a real big cut, then you'd be pretty ruthless on getting rid of any little bit. We're going to be cooking these reasonably low. A bit of silver skin here. Reasonably low, so I'm not too stressed about leaving some of those bits on there. I'm going to finish trimming the rest of these up, and then we'll go through seasoning. Cool, so we've got them all trimmed up. I'm just going to apply a little bit of olive oil here as a binder. Just going to give them a bit of a drizzle, rub them down, again just for no other reason than to help the rub stick. They're not particularly kind of moist and tacky just naturally like some other meats are, so they do need a little bit of help in that department. You could really use just about anything, but I find olive oil just always sitting out there on the bench and it's handy. I've converted it or put it into a shaker, but I'm using the more pork lamb rub. Had that in the pantry. Yeah, got a strong kind of a cumin base. Definitely got paprika in there, some nice chunky bits of pepper, and lots of other yummy stuff, salt, sugar, all the usual. So just gonna shake some rub on just like you would any other video or any other cook. Nothing special here, just shake and flip and just keep turning it. And when we're all rubbed down, we will let them sit, go fire up the smoker. Just a tip, especially if you're working with some kind of coarser rubs, to rub from a high up. If you rub too close to the meat, it doesn't give you a chance to kind of adjust what you're doing in terms of dispersion and even coating, but the higher you go, kind of the more control you have over what's going on. So if you feel like you're struggling at all getting your meat rubbed evenly, try that as a bit of a tip. Something that's worked well and I've seen in other videos. Cool, so all rubbed down. I'm just going to let them set, let the rub do its work, and I'm going to go show you what we're going to use for our smoke sauce today. So follow me on that. So a while ago, one of the local brewers told me that he had some ex-Jack Daniel's oak whiskey barrels which he'd used for a brew and were surplus requirements, and he's big into barbecue. And so he told me that I should grab a barrel off him and chop it into chunks and give it a whirl, which I did. Fantastic. You can imagine the aroma is amazing. And so I bought a whole bunch of barrels off him, which are now collapsed down into the individual planks. Still got a couple more barrels here to deal with. So I am going to, I've actually run out of chunks, I am going to crank out the saw, chop up some chunks, and then going to get the Smoky Mountain fired up. Sweet, so I've got the fire ready to go here. These whiskey barrel chunks look like this when they're cut up. There's different diameter slats in the barrel, so this is kind of like a medium size. Aroma is super good. If you haven't tried these before, you've got to give them a whirl. But as per the Harry Sue method, we've got the wood chunks in the bottom, scattered around so that they burn at the right temp to produce the best possible smoke and flavour. And then once this is lit, I'm going to add just a couple on the top in the middle of the fire so that we get some smoke rolling straight away. So I'm going to get up the torch, we'll get this lit, and we'll get the lamb necks on there. Simple as that. Chimneys are for fireplaces, not barbecues. You got to grab one of these. Makes it so we'll let that get going. We'll chuck these chunks on top so we get some smoke right from the outset, and we'll get the rest of the smoker put back together, get it rolling. So I've got the necks on. You can see we've got a good amount of smoke rolling straight away, which is great. The aroma of the smoke, as you can imagine, it just is like whiskey wood smoke, and it's pretty cool. Hard to describe, but something you definitely got to try out. So we're basically just going to let these go for it 3 or 4 hours, get that smoke on them, get the good color. When the bark is set, we'll put them in a foil pan with some stock and just let that do the rest, kind of just like a normal cook, and let them rest and eat them. But we've got a long ways to go, so we'll keep you abreast of what's going on. So we're about an hour in. We'll just take a peek real quickly. Starting to look pretty good, got some of that nice smoke colour on. Quickly get the lid back on. The smoker kind of climbed up to about 275, which is a little bit hotter than I want to cook. So I've now got all the bottom vents shut. This is the one that I had open. I had the other two shut to begin with as well, so I'll shut that down, and hopefully we'll kind of stabilise a little bit closer to 250, but kind of anywhere between 225, 250-ish, and that range is going to work. We'll let it keep rolling and we'll check back in another couple hours, and then the bark should be set and we should be ready to chuck them in some liquid and get them wrapped up. Okay, another couple hours later, see we've kind of got it dialed back to 250ish, which is what we want. Whatever squiz. Oh yeah, you can see we've got some pretty neat colour on there. Scratch test, a little bit dry in terms of the rub, probably needs another hour or so, and we could boat it now, but I think another hour will do us good. Check the lid back on, let that temp recover. So yeah, we'll check back in an hour, and I think probably we'll need to get them wrapped up, and I really probably need to get them wrapped up then too, so they're ready in time for dinner, or we're going to have angry kiddos. So we'll check back then. Okay, so a little bit of a fast forward. I recorded a bunch of stuff and forgot to have the microphone turned on, which is a bit of a fail. So what I've done is warmed up some beef stock on the stove. You want to make sure that you're adding ideally warm liquid. If you add cold liquid to hot meat, it's just going to kill the cooking process. So you could use beer, whatever you want. Also what I did is I poured the liquid over the meat carefully just to rehydrate it. It's a tip I learned from Harry C with briskets. He actually pours the liquid over the meat, and the meat absorbs some of that liquid before he wraps, rather than just having the liquid sitting only in the bottom. You can see we haven't lost any of the bark, and that's why it's so important to have your bark set when using liquid. Otherwise, if it's not, it's just going to fall off when you add the liquid and then continue to fall off as it cooks. So we'll get this back on the smoker. Obviously get it covered up, and we'll probably crank the temp a little bit just so that we can get this done in time for dinner. It's about 4 o'clock, and now that we've got some liquid in there and got the hard part done, we can ride it a little bit quicker to the finish. So we'll do that and we'll get it sussed. Okay, so got it back on the pit. Great thing about this large size smoky mountain, or if you're using one of the Pro QXLs, the big boys, is you can fit the full size tinfoil trays, which saves a lot of hassle of having stuff split. So we'll get this back sorted. I've opened up 2 of the bottom vents, so we'll watch the temp, but that should climb up to kind of 300, maybe a little bit more, which is fine, and we'll give this a bit of a crank to the finish. I could just chuck it in the oven at this point, but also I want to have a bit of an experiment with just learning more about fire management and what the vent control does kind of at this stage in the cook, and what it does with the temp. So just a chance for me to learn more on that side of things. So kind of expecting maybe another hour and a half or so, and we should be good, but we'll check back in an hour or so and get a sense of the tenderness, and yeah, we'll go from there. So we'll just have a look at progress thus far. It's been wrapped for about an hour. Just going to use a finger test. It's coming away pretty easily. You could probably call it done, but I think we're going to roll a little bit longer. We're actually heading to the beach for a bit with the kids, so this will probably get another hour. So it'll be well and truly done, but we'll have a squiz when we get back. This thing was holding right on 300, which is great. Which is a temp that will work just nicely, so we can leave it rolling for an hour or so while we're out, and check it when we get back. Okay, so fast forward, been to the beach, done our thing. Temp's just come back a little bit. It's been running a fair while on the original lot of coals, so probably fair enough. What we'll do, got my trusty probing device here. I usually use a fork for any kind of meat that I'm pulling. If you can kind of turn the fork in it, then it's good to go. have a look here. So you can see that's coming away super easy. So yeah, don't want to wreck too many of these, but you can tell she's done. So we'll shut the smoker down. I'm going to wrap this up in a towel. We'll chuck it in that chili bin over there, and we'll just do some waiting until it's dinner time. I'll get some footage when they come out of the pan. Usually I would just eat them whole and just pick it up with a fork on your plate, but anyway, we'll get it all uncovered before it's time to serve up, and try a little bit and make sure it's as good as it looks. Okay, so these have been resting for about 45 minutes. Get the lid off. They look pretty good. I'm just gonna grab a bit here off this one. Flip the camera around here. So I gotta grab some more. It's too good. So we've got, let me grab a bit more here. We've really got a huge distinction between the bark, which is really nice and crusty and full of flavour, and the meat, which is incredibly hot, but also incredibly juicy and tender, and so almost a little bit like the way crackling is so different to the pork underneath. We've got a real distinction in the texture. That's what we're looking for. Yeah, super yummy. Really easy. Just to recap, so we trimmed them up. It was a pretty straightforward trim. Got some seasoning on them. Smoked them for, ended up being about 4 hours, maybe 4.5 at about 250-ish. Got them in the tray with the beef stock and have just gone to Pro Tender, let them rest. So I'm going to serve these up whole for the adults, and then I'll finish pulling this one apart here for the kids. I am going to drain all this juice off and reduce it down for a little bit of a jus that people can serve with it. So I'll do that now. I haven't really done much of that before, so I'm just going to heat it up in a saucepan. Maybe add a little bit of corn flour and water mixed in just to thicken it up a little bit, but I'll have a little bit of a play. So that's it from me on this one. Smoked lamb necks. Ask your butcher next time you're in to save a few for you. Come back in later in the week and cook them on the weekend. So hey, thanks for watching. Hey, hit subscribe, ring the bell. We're going to be keep pumping out videos, and hopefully you're learning something. As always, if you saw something I could have done better, or you got any questions or comments, don't be afraid to leave those and we'll get them answered ASAP. And we'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.